In my 11 years leading Sunday services at UUI, I have preached, by my estimate and with a little help from Microsoft Excel, somewhere around 400 sermons. That is a lot of me talking. So if I haven't already said what I want to say to you, shame on me. But as we wrap up our 11 years together, before we turn our attention to UUI's future, I did want to share just a few standout moments, lift up some things we have accomplished together since I first began leading Sunday services with you way back in 2012. And the first point of pride that I want to lift up is just that we made it through 2012 at all. If you were there, that was a tough time for UUI, coming out of a lot of conflict and the shared disappointment of a negotiated resignation of a ministry. Between 2012 and 2014, UUI's membership fell by about half before finally stabilizing in 2014. It was all hands on deck to get us through that time. The board showed exceptional determination and leadership. Lay leaders stepped up. People did what they needed to do to get things done. I remember on one occasion, Suzanne, who had taken over communications, this was before she was the DRE, she edited and sent out the e-blast from a hospital bed while waiting for surgery on a broken ankle. That's how we rolled. There were some bumps in those early years. In 2013, yours truly, still pretty new to the role of managing Sunday services, I delivered a very hard-hitting sermon about the abuse of prisoners of war at Guantanamo Bay. Specifically, I delivered that sermon on May 12th, 2013, which was Mother's Day. About 10 minutes before the service started, I realized it was Mother's Day. Way too late but to do anything but deliver my very hard-hitting sermon about the abuse of prisoners of war at Guantanamo Bay. Happy Mother's Day. People were nice about it, and I learned to pay more attention to the calendar when planning services. During this time, Mara Hyam-White was a remarkable, stable presence as our only paid administrative staff person. Natalie Spriggs-Trowbridge kept the RE program going as a part-time DRE, along with some very dedicated volunteers, before she left for seminary in 2015. As a lay-led congregation, UUI proved during this time it had grit and determination. It also had vision and commitment that stretched well beyond just keeping the doors open. UUI has always found out a way to live out its values, even in difficult times. In 2013, for example, UUI installed its first set of solar panels on the roof of the cottage building, even as all of this was going on. This was just the beginning of a dedicated, ongoing campaign to make the campus maximally sustainable. At about the same time, there was an ambitious replacement of every light bulb in the sanctuary with LED bulbs, all 192 of them. So many people on ladders. So much possibility for people falling off of ladders. But nobody did fall, and we cut power usage by 80%. Yes. Then the green team installed like all of these motion-sensitive light switches in the buildings to be even more energy efficient, which is why so many of my memories of UUI involve like being in a board meeting and the lights suddenly cut off and everyone starts like randomly waving their arms to get the lights to turn back on. The board took the Paris Pledge in 2016 to be carbon neutral by 2030, and believe me, we are going to hit that goal. Our coffee maker is online, and we can tell when it's been left on, and if you leave it on, we can turn it off remotely. That is true. In 2017, UUI raised $100,000 to install its second set of solar panels, the ground array at the entrance to our campus, and the result is today, UUI is almost 100% powered by solar power. With the creation of the thriving faith communities, we are taking the gospel of sustainability to faith communities all over the city. It has been a privilege to be a part of a congregation with such a visionary commitment to environmental sustainability in my time with you in so many ways that go beyond just solar power. I celebrate that with you, and I know that that work will continue. UUI had a visionary commitment on many fronts and a willingness to be creative and to take bold action. In June of 2014, there was a brief window where the marriage ban for LGBTQ people was lifted in Indiana. And UUI put together a rapid response marriage team that same day, offering to marry people on the spot in our sanctuary. Volunteers brought flowers, desserts, decorations. A person came with a viola. The photographer came. People came to be witnesses and celebrants. We had a UCC minister there as an officiant. And we did, in fact, marry a happy couple here at UUI that weekend before the ban was reimposed. That will always be one of my proudest memories of my time at UUI. Now, marriage equality is the law of the land, but a whole host of new laws are aimed at LGBTQ people in Indiana. I encourage you to find new ways to be creative and bold in your resistance, and new ways to be joyful about it. In 2014, I first connected UUI with a social justice organization then called IndyCan, now known as Faith in Indiana. I had learned about IndyCan through our relationship with All Souls Unitarian. They were working with them. IndyCan was using faith communities as a base from which to build a coalition of people from all races, classes, ethnic backgrounds, religious backgrounds to organize for justice in Indy. I liked that IndyCan meetings, which were invariably held in church basements around the city, they were consistently the most diverse spaces that I ever set foot in, across every dimension you could imagine. Again, race, class, religious background, whatever it was. I liked that they trained ordinary people to organize, and they put people from the impacted communities into leadership positions. I liked that their organizers knew what they were doing. They were smart and strategic and committed to making a difference. Our first task in 2014 was to stop the then mayor from building a new $2 billion prison complex, which was going to have hundreds of new prison beds that we knew were going to be filled with black and brown bodies. And so UUI members began showing up at city council meetings, at organizing meetings, at protests, and we won. And the prison plan was scrapped. And I remember the mayor screamed at an IndyCan organizer, a guy named Juard Barnes, at like a meet and greet breakfast, like got right up in his face and screamed at him. And I will never forget what Juard told me. He said, having someone stand there and scream in my face, someone in power stand there and scream in my face because I'd messed up his plans, that was the best feeling in the world. He said, that is your dream as an organizer. Juard is my hero. Keep putting the pressure on those people in power. In 2014, UUI members packed an IndyCan meeting on criminal justice reform. IndyCan had brought in experts from around the other cities around the country who had implemented something called targeted gun violence reduction. It's a data-driven approach that emphasizes holistic community engagement with people who are most likely to perpetrate or be the victim of gun violence, as opposed to like mass incarceration. It's strategic, it's data-driven, it's holistic. UUI members began advocating for this approach here in Indianapolis, and it was a long haul of showing up and advocating over the course of many years. And we kept at it, and I remember sitting at a table with the mayor and the sheriff, public safety officers in 2019, surrounded by Faith in Indiana organizers, by concerned citizens, and by many of you, many UUI members. There were 25 of us at the table together. The mayor said they'd never seen a gathering like this on a public issue. We convinced the mayor to give the program the funding and the commitment it deserved. And it may not seem like it in the news, but gun violence is actually down 15%. It's a start. We can surely do better. There are no quick and easy solutions to this city's problems with gun violence, but this was a promising step forward, and you were a part of it. In 2023, we won another long-standing Faith in Indiana objective, creation of a clinician-led emergency response team here in Indianapolis, which means we are going to respond to people who are having mental health crises with medical experts. with social workers, with care instead of with armed force. The pilot program launches this summer. Keep an eye on it. Keep advocating for it. I want you to know that UUI's work with Faith in Indiana is making a difference in the city, and I hope you will continue to invest in that relationship. In 2016, UUI began showing up on the streets of Indianapolis for roadside Black Lives Matter vigils. We had a banner, and we would just go show up on the road with the banner. A couple of times we showed up here in our neighborhood at the corner of Meridian and 38th. We were joined by local activists and anyone who wanted to come from the community. People driving by would lay on their horns. They were surprised and delighted, mostly. People took pictures, they took videos, they tweeted about us. A few people would get out of their cars and say thanks. Passerbyers would make their own signs and join us. On another occasion, we held a vigil on the corner of 86th and Meridian on a Saturday afternoon. Same deal, cars laying on their horns, mostly appreciative, a few not. After 30 minutes or so of this, we noticed someone in the apartment building across the street had made their own sign and put it in the window. It said, "Baby trying to sleep." We wrapped up the vigil. Sorry, baby. Sorry, baby. And our Black Lives Matter banner eventually went up on the roof of the sanctuary before finding its permanent home on the side of the building, because up on the roof, the wind kept tearing it to shreds. In 2017, a group of national UU religious educators of color called on UU congregations all around the country to hold what were called white supremacy teach-ins. These were Sunday services devoted to serious reflection on how institutional racism and oppression shows up within our own tradition, not just out there, but within Unitarian Universalism. Eventually, more than 700 UU congregations held these teach-ins, had this conversation. We were the first UU congregation in the state of Indiana to do so. These were challenging conversations, but you were willing to take the risk and do the work. In 2021, UUI adopted the 8th principle to codify our commitment to be an anti-racist, anti-oppressive congregation. And in between, the UUI board and the staff and you have devoted much attention and energy and resources to internal education and to relationship building. We've made plenty of mistakes along the way. I myself have been called out for my own errors more times than I can count, and we keep on. So keep on. Keep doing that work. Keep building on that anti-oppressive commitment across all of the areas, not just racism, but classism, ableism and accessibility, neurodiversity, LGBTQ issues, immigration issues, reproductive justice, anything that stands in the way of our commitment to honor the inherent worth and dignity of every person and to promote justice and equity for all people. I want to name in particular the Welcoming Congregations Renewal Team, the Green Team, the Reproductive Justice Team, and the Refugee Team have all done and are doing powerful work for justice with strong emerging leadership. Support them, learn about them, get involved where you can. They will lead this congregation into the next decade. I also want to say that thanks to Suzanne and a terrific religious education council and many dedicated volunteers, we have one of the most consciously anti-racist, multicultural, and inclusive religious education programs that I know of. These values are built into every level of the program. It is one of the most important things that we do. It is one of the things that I am most proud to have been a part of. UUI should be very proud of that and proud of your commitment to religious education. One of the most visionary things the board did during my time happened in 2015. By 2015, the congregation was finally starting to grow again. UUI could afford to hire a full-time staff person finally, and the board chose to invest in hiring a full-time director of religious education, not a full-time minister. And it was a brilliant decision. And it was consistent with UUI's commitment to children and families, and it worked. It took about a year, but by 2016, the RE program was thriving again. Families were returning to UUI. I urge you, keep that commitment alive. Support your new director of religious education when they are hired. Be patient. Empower them to make decisions and make changes. Don't expect them to be Suzanne. And understand that everything is experimental right now after COVID. It's going to take time to figure out what works for UUI. As much as you can, volunteer. And if you want to really experience the magic of UUI and the power of Unitarian Universalism, spend some time with our children and youth, because they are amazing. And finally, speaking of COVID, in March of 2020, COVID happened, you may remember. We shut down for what we thought was a few weeks, and we stayed closed for a year. Then open, then closed, then open, then closed again, and now open. And if anything has demonstrated that this congregation has not lost one iota of its grit and determination and commitment in the last 11 years, it was that. You have come through COVID brilliantly, with so much care for one another and so much energy and creativity and vision, so much commitment to your future. I am proud to have been a part of that. I am very proud that in all that time on Zoom, 150 plus services now, your worship team has not dropped one single F-bomb on an open mic. That is not a challenge. That's just a fact. That's just a fact. Which brings us to today. What else is there to say at the end of this amazing journey? There's a saying that goes, if the only prayer you say is thank you, it is enough. So let me say thank you. I want to thank the staff with whom I have had the privilege of working with and collaborating with. Linda, our amazing music director. Yeah. Linda, who for so many years has pretended to believe me when I say, Linda, I promise the service planner will be filled out by Monday. And somehow she still manages to come up with the perfect music for every Sunday. Jill, who plays all of the things by request, sometimes with very little notice. Yes. And is so good at improvising on the fly. Like the time I mentioned Mariah Carey's All I Want for Christmas in the sermon, and she played it on the spot for the recessional. I want to thank Mara, your congregational administrator, who knows all the things and does all the things and is an absolute rock for this church. You are so lucky to have her. Yeah. Erica, who manages all the regular communications-related things so ably, of which there are so very many, more than you know. But she will also send out a special e-blast announcement like almost before I finished asking for it. I don't know how she does it, but it's magic. Tim, our facilities person, who with Mara and the dedicated volunteer facilities team maintains all the things. David Brown, our outreach and care coordinator, who has graced us with his expertise and his caring presence for 2 years and raised our volunteer support game so much in such a short time. David, we are very sad to see you go, and we thank you. Delaney, our youth ministry coordinator, who's been a wonderful asset to our religious education program and is now on to seminary her own self. Delaney, we're excited for the next part of your journey. And of course, thank you to Suzanne, your director of lifespan religious exploration and my partner in all things. I would be remiss not to mention Kay McSpadden. Not a lot of people know this, but Kay, in her role as volunteer office admin, puts together the text scripts and the PowerPoints every Sunday and sends the worship stuff out to every single person. Thank you, Kay, for that. I want to thank Roger Sell for being our volunteer assistant treasurer for many years. That is one of those big, semi-invisible roles without which the church could not do its thing. So thank you, Roger. I want to thank the board in all the incarnations I have served in for their steadfast leadership, their creativity and courage, and for their confidence in me. I want to thank my committees on ministry for their wisdom and support and for filling out so much paperwork on my behalf. The UUA loves itself some paperwork. I did a whole service back in March thanking all the volunteers that make UUI run, so I won't repeat it, but you know who you are. Thank you to everyone who does a thing. Thank you to everyone who participates in this community in whatever way you do. Without you, there would be no UUI. This amazing community where I first discovered Unitarian Universalism, where Suzanne and I raised our children, where I went from banker to minister, and where Suzanne discovered her own calling as a director of religious exploration. We have so much to be grateful to UUI for, and I'm deeply grateful for the time I have had with all of you. I'm proud of what we have accomplished together. I am excited for what lies ahead for you, and I will carry you in my heart always. I love you all, and thank you.